there. I am glad you could be here today for this lesson. We do have a big lesson today. This is something I will not be able to cover everything that happens, so you may want to have someone help you look into all four of the Gospels because there are bits of the story that are in all of them, and it all makes for a complete understanding of what happens. But I'll go ahead and give you what I can for right now. Okay, in our last lesson, we were talking about the Last Supper that Jesus had with his disciples just before the main thing was going to happen. The main thing being what people call Good Friday, or as they called it when I was growing up, Black Friday. Now, you'll notice I'm wearing a black shirt and a black tie. Normally, I save the explanation for this to the end of the lesson if I'm going to talk about it. Today, though, I wanted to start up front with that because when people refer to Black Friday, they weren't really talking about color. What they were talking about was the difference when God is not present. So you think of God as light. In fact, the Bible tells us God is light. Everything is revealed with God, everything is visible. The opposite of that being darkness, so that when people are blocked from the truth, if they are not taught about God, there is darkness in their lives and they can't see what they need to be able to see. And so that's how we would see Black Friday in that sense, is that something very bad happens and even the people involved in it don't understand everything about it. So let's take up where we left off at the end of the Last Supper with the disciples. Now, Judas had already gone, and he was going out to find the Jewish leaders and the soldiers that worked with them. Now, these soldiers were not Roman soldiers. Now, a Roman soldier might typically look something like this, with a shield, with a spear, and a sword. Now, you notice the sword is pretty short because they would fight up close. They would throw their spear or javelin, you might call it, and then they would come in close with the shield and with this short sword. So when swords are mentioned, think of these that are fairly small or fairly short, not like the big swords we're used to seeing in some movies. But the temple guards um, and some of the other soldiers that the Jewish people had were there for guarding the temple and guarding certain parts of the organization, meaning the priest and all of that. The Romans were actually in charge of everything, and the Jewish leaders could only do what they did because the Romans let them do this. So Jesus has gone out to the Mount of Olives, and at the base of the Mount of Olives was Gethsemane, which was a garden where there was an oil press. They would press the olives to get the oil from them, and that would be used for eating and for cooking things. Okay, he would go there regularly. Judas knew about this, and so when he went to tell the people where Jesus was, he was leading them right there. Well, Jesus went there with his remaining disciples. Then he took Peter, James, and John with him, and they went a little bit farther out. And he was with them. He wanted them close by as he prayed. Then he went about stone's throw away. He started praying. And what we find out from his prayer, he did not want to go through with the crucifixion. He knew what was coming up. He did not want to die from this. And I generally thought that, okay, he's afraid, and that makes sense because he knows what is going to happen. But when I reread it, I saw that he was sad. And it got me to thinking that, well, maybe there's a lot more of it is that he is sad that this has to happen. It's the only way to save the people. And maybe not as much about what he physically would have to go through. Well, he prays for an hour. He goes back and finds the three disciples asleep, and he wakes them up and says, could you stay awake with me? He goes back and prays, and he's praying. God, Father, please let this pass from me. But if this is the only way this can happen, then let's go with your plan. He comes back, he finds him asleep again, then he goes a third time, and he prays the same thing. And then when he comes back, at this point, Judas shows up. And Judas runs over to Jesus and gives him a kiss. It'd be kind of like now giving a handshake or a hug to somebody. That was common when people greeted each other to do so with a kiss. And that was the signal that this one is Jesus. Because you have to remember, it's nighttime. A lot of the people have never seen Jesus before, the ones who are after him. And they've got torches and lanterns, and it's still kind of dark, and they're trying to see who it is. Well, they are coming here to arrest Jesus. Of course, they have no authority to do this, but that doesn't stop them. They go ahead and they start to take him. Well, Peter draws out a sword. Of course, we remember it's kind of a short thing, and he attacks one of the guys and cuts off his ear. And Jesus tells him to stop. Well, then Peter doesn't know what to do because he had planned to die for Jesus, and he could do that when he's all fired up and ready to go. But now he doesn't really know how he's supposed to act. And Jesus is saying, "Let these guys go. Just take me." And he also heals this guy's ear. Um, so they take Jesus away. They bind him. They actually go to this guy named Annas, who is not the high priest, but they refer to him as the high priest because the way they were doing things at that time, which I don't think was the way God wanted it done, is that each year they were swapping out high priests. But this year was actually Caiaphas, but his father-in-law, meaning his wife's father, was the other guy. They were swapping it back and forth. And so there's really something not right in all of this. But they go to him and he questions Jesus, and Jesus um, answers him, and somebody punches Jesus in the face because they don't like the way that Jesus answered the question. Well, they take him from there to Caiaphas, and meanwhile, Peter's following along, and John is apparently also going along too. And John knows some people in Caiaphas's household, and he's trying to find out what's going on and trying to see if he can help Jesus get out of this because they still don't understand what has to happen. Well, following this is coming up to daylight, and after Caiaphas questions Jesus, and Jesus isn't really wanting to answer because he's wanting to remain silent and not give them the satisfaction of a response. But finally, Caiaphas says, "I charge you under oath to God to answer me." Well, that was a proper way for Caiaphas to word his demand. And so Jesus answered me. And Caiaphas is saying, Are, are you the king of the Jews? Are you the one God sent? And Jesus said, "Yes, it's as you say it is. I'll be sitting at the right hand of the Father." Well, that's all Caiaphas has to hear. Okay, this man needs to die. He's speaking blasphemy. And they can't do it themselves. So people want to have Jesus killed. They take Jesus in front of a bunch of other people who are Jewish leaders. Same thing comes up, and they say, "Okay, we're going to kill him." They send him to Pontius Pilate. Now he's the Roman governor. The the Jews themselves cannot have somebody killed, but they can send them over to the Romans and hope that the Romans will go along with it. So what they do is they say, "Oh, this guy says he's a king, and that goes against Caesar, and therefore he needs to be killed." Well, Pontius Pilate, and I'm going to show you kind of what he may have looked a little bit like this. The Romans would wear a lot of white and a lot of red, and that kind of indicate their station. Um, so he has heard a little bit. In fact, he gets a message from his own wife. And Pontius Pilate's wife says, "Do not have anything to do with this man," meaning Jesus. Said, "I had a dream about him. You don't want to get involved with him." And so Pilate is thinking, I want to let this guy go. And then when he finds out what the charges are, he says he's a king. He goes, I don't see a reason to have him killed. And the Jewish leaders say, well, he started out, he came from Galilee, and he's been causing all kinds of trouble. And Pilate goes, aha, here's my way out of this. Because he says, oh, he's from Galilee? Well, Herod, the king, happens to be in town. Let's send him over to him. So he sends Jesus over to Herod. Now, Herod is the same guy who had John the Baptist killed, and he was always wanting to see a miracle being done. Jesus comes before him and he wants to see a miracle. Jesus isn't about to do that. For one thing, he's not trying to get out of the crucifixion part. You notice that changed. He did when he was praying in the garden, but now he's determined he's going through with this because this is what the Father wants. Well, Harry can't get anything out of him, but he makes a joke out of it. And all along, soldiers are spitting on or punching Jesus as this goes along. He sends him back to Pontius Pilate. Pilate finds no cause for Jesus to be killed, but these guys in the crowd are going, if you don't kill him, you're no friend of Caesar's. Well, that scares Pilate because he realizes he's got one job. That's to keep the peace in Judea. And so he has Jesus flogged, which means whips, and that's a real nasty punishment for somebody. Sends him out to be crucified. Jesus is out there, and the crucifixion was pretty nasty business. They would have beams of wood and a cross piece, and they would use these huge nails. Now, this is a railroad spike. It's used to hold rails to the wooden bits, the tracks that go along. And you see, this is a big nail. This is about the size that one of the nails would have been used, and they would nail people to the cross, through the hands, the wrist, and through the feet to the cross, and leave them there till they died. And they did this to Jesus. Now, there were two other people they crucified at the same time. These guys were robbers, and there was one on the left and one on the right of him. And people would, when somebody's being crucified, yell all kinds of things at them. And these guys did too at first, but then finally one of them tells the other one, "Don't, don't do this. We deserve what we're getting." He said, "But Jesus did nothing wrong." And he says something to Jesus very important a lot of people miss. He says, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Right now, they're all facing death. No one believes that Jesus is going to come back from the dead. But this thief shows faith in Jesus. And Jesus tells him, tonight you'll be with me in paradise. Well, after this, Jesus eventually dies. The earth gets dark. It's like an eclipse, but lasts for 3 hours. It's real dark. Then Jesus dies, and there's an earthquake. And the guys crucifying him say, wow, this guy had something to do with the gods because they didn't know the real God. And this guy named Joseph of Arimathea comes along, asks Pilate to take the body. Pilate's surprised that Jesus is already dead. Has it checked up? Yep, he's really dead. Joseph and a fellow named Nicodemus take Jesus' body. They put the spices on it, the linens, and they put him in Joseph of Arimathea's tomb. It's one that's been dug, but it's never been used. This is the darkest point in the world. And I'm talking about in history. And here we're going to stop. Everything looks bad. Everything looks bad. There is no hope at all in the world. But the story does not end here. And for that, you'll want to be back next time when we talk about exactly what happens. Something that never happened before and need not happen again. And I hope to see you then. Bye.